本当？見えないでしょ？どこにいるのかな？見えないよ。
What's good, Internet? It's March 31st, 2022, and you are listening to Waypoint Radio, episode 471. I'm your host, Rob Zach, and I'm wondering, has March always had 31 days in it? I can't seem to remember. I'm joined by Patrick Klepek.
I now know that it definitely has that, because when my youngest, who shout outs to Elizabeth, you know, when you're obviously going through the record of my online history and listening to these podcasts when you're older, do know that your dad shouted out your second birthday when it was happening. But March 30th is a friend of mine, real scumbag. We did not want our daughter to share a birthday with him. Did not want her.
Did you delay the birth?
Well, like,
Way to go, Katie.
like cosmically, like we're praying, and then also didn't want it on April 1st. That just seems like a kind of a cruel birthday to have as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, can we just take long enough to be March 31st, and nailed it. So now I know there are 31 days because the birth god shined upon us and allowed us to split the difference between those 2 days.
Happy birthday to future.
To future Elizabeth. Well, you know,
To future Waypoint Radio
she'll
listener.
listen to this when she's, 5, which is the customary time when you hand over a thumb drive to your child and say, time to start listening to my podcast history.
Here's
Russell
all
joined
of
by-
it. Good luck.
Got it. We also have Renata Price
Howdy, gamers.
and our producer, Ricardo Contreras.
Yo.
So today we are considering all things Halo on TV. We watched the pilot of the new Halo TV series for Paramount Plus / Showtime, and
No, it's definitely Paramount Plus. It was
Yeah.
it was a Showtime production for a long time, and then
so they just still have a production credit, but they're like,
because
hands off that.
they shuttled it through, like it was a Showtime even while it was in production, and then they said, but where we want to make our money is on Paramount Plus.
Okay, I wondered about that.
Yeah.
So let's just get into it. So the broad overview of the Halo TV show that's on Paramount Plus right now, and I have to say, Paramount Plus sucks. I'm just gonna put that out there
Bad
too.
app. Bad fucking application.
Did you
Not
have the
good.
problem? Did you have the problem that I warned you about?
Oh,
Or a different one?
Patrick, I would have loved that problem. I had the problem where I couldn't play it on my TV at all.
At all?
Like the interface was lagging like 15 seconds on inputs to scroll through, and that made it unusable. And then the show never launched. The circle would just spin and spin and spin. So I had to watch it on my browser, which was fine, but not ideal.
Yeah, if I want to watch this this crummy action show, I'd love to do it in 4K HDR, which is my separate issue. Is like I tried to watch it at like 20 minutes before I had to pick up my kids, a couple days ago, and I was like, oh, like sneak in a little bit of that episode. So I put it on like the nice TV I have at my office desk, but it's a TCL, which is like Roku based. And then I was like, boy, this stream sure looks shitty. I was like, this show looks surprisingly cheap, but not. This stream is making it worse. And then I Googled it, and it was just like, oh yeah, like the Roku, like the native Roku app on a TCL TV just like will not output 4K HDR. So then I had to go upstairs to Apple's a troublesome company too, but they also strong arm everybody into like making sure that you get the correct and like best streams on their apps. And then it looked at least how it was supposed to look on my TV upstairs.
Patrick, you said something that I'm actually very curious about. You said that this show looks very cheap.
Yeah.
And is that specifically referring to the CGI in the show, or is that referring to the general look of the show? Because I cannot fucking determine whether or not I think that the live action portions of this show look good at times. If you put a gun to my head and said, Ren, does this show look good? I would be like, I don't know.
Did you watch any of the, so Rob?
Yes, I watched all of Forward Unto Dawn.
Okay.
Actually, can we lay some foundational stuff here about
watch?
ourselves before we get into the Halo TV show? And
Sure, please.
just so I know know the territory that we're all walking into here. Kato, Rob, Patrick, what are your respective Halo histories?
I don't know
Kato's shaking
shit,
his head.
basically. The Covenant
Kato's
aliens.
history is trying to get us to
There's
do
a spark
like
that's
a
guilty.
Waypoint 101
Yeah.
on Halo so that you can understand Halo.
So I could understand Halo.
And I'm the only one who started.
God.
All right.
Uh,
Rob?
so I'm a Halo maniac, and by that I mean I appreciate it from afar, but I'm very curious what's happening in the world of Halo.
Oh,
There have been a few things that have sparked some real interest. In particular, like honestly,
it's made you feel guilty that you haven't like worked
Spark.
on that spark, right?
yeah, but also, so I'll be honest here.
No, we're right over Rob's head. Like,
I know that
Guilty
one. Yeah.
thank you, Kato. Appreciate
It's
you.
the ghost before the
You know,
ghost.
the
is
audience
around.
has got my back.
listen, Patrick, if you want to turn this episode of Waypoint Radio into basbasically like a numbers station, but for Halo lore terms, I can do. Mendicant
based
bias.
on your comments in the Waypoint chat when I referred to them as a grunt or a brute, and then was rudely corrected for their correct alien terminology.
The word rude is doing a lot of work here.
Helpfully.
Thank you, Rob.
My history with Halo is that series is like incredibly important in the arc of like me playing games when I was younger. Like Halo 1 and 2 specifically were like the biggest things in the world. Like Halo 2 came out when I was a sophomore in college, and Halo 1 was extremely popular where like because you could plug your Xbox into an Ethernet cord, and then you were just as part of a LAN because you were all just part of the same internet in your dorm room. You could at any given time find like between 5 and 10 full games occurring just locally, like in your dorm, because that's how big Halo was at the time. But like Halo lore, Halo like world building, you know, I liked those campaigns, but I was mostly there for the multiplayer. And even my engagement with the campaign, of which I played all of them. I played every single Halo game, and a bunch of them several times, at least for like Halos 1 through Reach, is mostly like engaging with the campaign through my friends. Like, oh, we played it on normal. Now let's play it on heroic. Now let's play it on legendary. And actually like internalizing like its world is like fairly low. Like in terms of what I've like taken away from the series over time.
Got it. I was deeply curious. I'm actually pretty close to you, Patrick, in this regard. And not in the lore regard, but in the relationship the series has to me, because I'm really sorry for the thing I'm about to say just in advance. Halo 3 came out when I was 6 or 7. And I remember it was, I very, very vividly remember going to my later best friend's second birthday party.
And yelling,
not
finish
second
the
birthday,
fight.
second grade birthday party. And there he had Halo. And I had exclusively played like Nintendo games and like had like a PS2 to this point in my life. And this motherfucker had Halo. And
He
I
had
was
a
like,
ring world at his birthday party.
I
That's
was like,
fucking
what?
awesome.
I was like, what is this? What is this? And then someone owned me with a gravity hammer for like an hour straight. And I was like,
That rules.
what are my hands doing? What is this? And then I got
like even just first person is like, I guess.
Imagine being introduced to first person shooters at a fucking birthday party where you're getting owned repeatedly. And then I went on to, he and I got really into watching Halo Machinima videos at his house. So I would like go over to his house as a kid.
Oh, you got
and we
red
would
versus blue
watch.
pilled, huh?
I did get red versus blue. Red versus blue is actually how I ended up getting involved in the Something Awful forums and the Something Awful Let's Play community, which is how I ended up bumping into Austin and Gita when I was like 12 years old.
God, that's funny because red versus blue was like one of the earliest examples of like, this is long before it was easy to like capture like video games and manipulate audio and video, and like red versus blue became extreme. Like that red versus blue was like these two soldiers on like alternate like fields in a deathmatch or capture the flag, and they just like did funny voices over
Blood
them.
Gulch, yeah.
Yeah, Blood Gulch. Yeah, Blood Gulch. Yeah, like far and away, probably like one of the best maps that Halo's ever produced, and it was extremely popular. I don't know how funny it actually was. It was funny enough to get like acquired by Rooster Teeth at one point for like
no, they
significant.
so it's the reverse order. Patrick.
Did they build Rooster Teeth
So-
out of Red vs. Blue?
Yeah.
Also, I'm gonna say something insane.
I knew there was a connection, but it's been a while.
I'm gonna say something insane that is 100% true. That
All
is
right.
that is a whole other thing. You cannot understand the actual structure of the modern internet without first understanding Red vs. Blue and Rooster Teeth. Like
I
it
think
is
that's right.
it is the fundamental text for the current structure of online, from Penny Arcade to the way websites are structured to the way that community is built in online spaces, and like how like we create like content creators and how we think about like multi-channel networks and that shit. Rooster Teeth is like the skeleton key for understanding the modern internet and the culture of the modern internet. It is like a fascinating entity to me. This aside, all of this was like super, super influential on me. And then I also, of course, became a lore nerd because a thing that has yet to come up on the show is that anytime I'm exposed to a system, like a system of like being or a lore fact in a piece of media, I am unable to forget it. I have a fucking eidetic memory for bullshit, which means that I'm
Have you ever met two opposite people? There's Ren and then there's Patrick. I can't remember what my favorite noodle is, so I can share in a funny anecdote during a dinner with my colleagues. Ren, 6-year-old Ren, cannot forget like looking up the name of an alien from Halo.
yeah.
That might be the key, though, Patrick.
It's that, and then also I also can't forget like systems. So like anytime I learn like a piece of like literary theory, that shit is stuck in my brain until the day that I die. Which is why
I don't know that sounds better. I don't know which of our worlds is
it's not.
preferable.
It's
Hold
not.
on. Let's
good.
check back in with Ren when she's 35, though. Like, right now, like, what I'm hearing is Red versus Blue imprinted. Let's see if it remains. Let's see how deep the impression was when there's all the other bullshit
I can
that you got to keep in
explain-
your head.
I can explain the deep red versus blue lore. I have
don't.
that. I have.
Please
I
don't.
won't. I won't. I won't. I promise. I won't. I
You
promise.
could do your,
You have to
you could do
save
your
that
own
for a
spin-off
pod-
pod.
that's a-
Hey, on
yeah,
this Monday,
different
Ren's going to talk
podcast.
into a mic by herself and explain Red versus Blue for 45 minutes. Send in your questions.
So to understand Red versus Blue, first we have to go back to Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Stupid.
What if characters become aware of their absurd plight? Anyway, so also a bit of stage setting here for just what is the Halo TV series about, because I think that's already sort of set some people on edge because
Silver
it
timeline,
seems-
baby.
Seems like it might be a lot of like Mandalorian on this, or Lone Wolf and Cub like stuff happening here. But the pilot episode lays out some pretty familiar like groundwork for the Halo universe, which is that we open on a planet full of what the UNSC calls innies, which are basically the people on the like colonial planets out there in the galaxy, who are basically like contract laborers generating natural resources for the UNSC government that runs Earth, and are engaged in a long-running, sometimes hot, sometimes cold war over an independence movement, basically to, you know, break away from the UNSC and like actually earn fair wages for the wealth they generate with their labor. And the UNSC has been trying to suppress and outright kill these folks for years. And we open on a sort of stronghold of miners who are working for independence, and they're very on edge because they are preparing for yet another showdown with the UNSC at some point. And instead of getting that, what they get is attacked by a new alien threat. Our familiar friends, the Covenant, show up, and Patrick tried to prepare me for this when we were streaming yesterday, that there'd be a lot of dead kids. I was unprepared for a back-to-back sequence of children exploding like water balloons.
They
And-
fucking burst.
Just like, whoops, that leg's not there anymore. I remember this hyper-violence from the Halo series. It's one of my favorite things.
The way that the person hits the tree there's a shot where someone gets blown and like their torso hits a tree, and it's one of the most like visceral. I don't use that term often, and I don't use it lightly here. One of the most visceral acts of violence I've ever seen in a TV show. Just a wet meat slapping a tree in the worst way possible.
And then I was thinking, I think Patrick might have oversold it because that wasn't that many kids. No. A few seconds later, all the miners, like children, run to the safety of the bunker. Let me tell you what proves not to be safe from a brute.
Oh no, these energy swords.
A bunker full of
Excuse me,
children.
isn't that an elite?
An elite.
Sure, whatever.
Excuse me, Sangheili.
God, you're both dropped from the call.
I was saying this as a bit. I promise. I swear to God, I won't do this.
No, you should. You should.
Either way, he
They're a little
cracks
bit too
that
much,
open like somebody making a midnight pantry raid, and finds just a bag of goldfish and just demolishes all the children of the village. And then right after just about everyone is slaughtered, the UNSC shows up and drops in a squad of Spartans led by Master Chief. They don't save anyone. They kill the Covenant, and the only person to survive is the daughter of the leader of the colony, Quan, who is taken by Master Chief after he experiences some sort of weird vision interacting with an occult like object that he finds in the cave the Covenant were studying. He begins to take her back to UNSC headquarters on Reach, and that's when we sort of meet the UNSC and realize what they see here is an opportunity to strike a political bargain and unite the independence like activists under their banner. And they basically try to get this girl to become their mouthpiece in the wake of this attack. Instead, she says she's going, if they don't grant her terms, which is granting independence to the people of her homeworld, she will blame the UNSC for the attack. And so we meet the fine people of the UNSC, which are various flavors of martinets and fascists and professional soldiers and mad scientists. Written.
Oh, I was gonna specifically like point out the characters who are important here,
Yes.
which is Dr. Catherine Halsey, who is the originator of the.
Girl bossing it up here on this.
She is the most girl boss. Dr.
Played by
Catherine
Natasha
Halsey.
Micklehone, who is like awesome and one of those actresses I've never understood. Like, why aren't you a bigger deal? But that's just me.
Dr. Catherine Halsey is the war criminal adoptive mother of Master Chief, the originator of the Spartan program. She has a daughter, Miranda Keyes.
Was this always true?
Yes, Miranda
Okay,
Keyes
this
has
is
always
standard
been
lore.
Halsey's
Okay.
daughter. Yes, so actually this show, okay, so a thing that like a lot of people, I've seen, not a lot of people, but some people complaining about is the show's like being like lore inaccurate or like trying to like twist
do they
fuck
call
with
that
the
an
story of Halo.
adaptation? I believe that's what like
It is an adaptation. Yeah,
it
I
sounds
think
like,
it's
it sounds like Ren has another point, though.
it's actually doing a pretty good job because the point in the Human Covenant War that we're at in like the timeline of the series is actually lining up with how old Master Chief is, with the fact that Miranda Keyes is here, because Miranda Keyes was born in 2525, which is the beginning of the Human Covenant War. And so if she's in her like early, she looks like about 20 years old. She looks like a young military officer. That means that Master Chief's about 34 or 35, which is how old he looks in this show. 35 going on 40, which is actually pretty correct for where we're at in the timeline, based on Miranda Keyes' age. And also we have Miranda Keyes' father, Commander Keyes, whose name is currently slipping my mind. His first name.
Oh,
yes.
Danny Sapani's the actor, Captain
Yes.
Jacob Keyes. Is this
Yes.
the guy who is the commander of the Pillar of Autumn in the opening cutscene of the game? Okay.
Well, yes. Actually,
Okay.
yes. I believe, yes, it is Keyes. It's just they look very different. The actor playing Keyes and the original like character looked so
Yeah,
different.
but I just had no idea that like what was throwing me was more I just had no idea Keyes had a relationship with Halsey. I've totally missed that. Like I don't know much about Halsey. I do know she comes up a lot.
because the games don't communicate most of what's going
Oh my
on in this show,
There's
Rob. Like
so much information. Okay, so Halsey is the originator of the Spartan program. The Spartan program important to the series, is what Master Chief is. Master Chief, the other guys, they're all part of the Spartan 2 program, which is the first generation of Spartans. You would think it was the Spartan 1s. No, fucking idiot, dumbass, fool. It's actually...
This is the second wave of kidnapping children from their parents and replacing them with clones that die after a couple of years.
First wave, actually. The Spartan 1s... a fun fact, Commander Johnson, the guy who swears a lot in the video games, who commands the Marines, he was actually a Spartan 1. Which is to say that he has had a lot of physical modifications, but he had them later in life and piloted Mark I Mjolnir armor, which is basically just a mech suit.
I'd rather have that deal.
Yeah, it's a better deal.
At least he had some agency in the process. Master Chief did not.
Yeah.
So yeah,
these are characters.
We'll get some other things because I do feel like there are some key tweaks though they made to some of the chronology here, but we'll get to that in a minute. That I'm curious, maybe they're not, but to me that's how they read. And we also shouldn't forget Admiral Parangosky, who is just the most ruthless like military commander on Reach. She is the one who looks at this situation as like, we should just kill that kid. This kid's more trouble than she's worth. Let's whack the kid. And because Master Chief's the only one escorting the child on his ship home, he gets the order to kill the kid, and for the first time in his life, defies a direct command from UNSC. And this sets up what is going to be, I think, the rest of the series, right? Is that this series opens with Master Chief going rogue, the UNSC trying to, both by means of hijacking his suit controls, hijacking his ship controls, carry out their intent to kill the kid. But if all that fails, they are fully prepared, and this is what the climax of the episode is, they are fully prepared to basically kill him or take him into custody when they land on Reach. And we also learned that Halsey, despite like having made a protest but not appearing to be in complete mutiny here, does issue different orders to the Spartans that appear to supersede what the UNSC can actually tell the Spartans to do. She tells the other Spartans, if anyone tries to hurt Master Chief, fuck their shit up. So Halsey has a private death squad that seems to act independently of the chain of command, but all of that is mooted by the fact that the weird little artifact that Master Chief recovered from this planet turns on at a critical moment, brings power back to the ship, and he and Quan escape.
Thanks, MacGuffin.
Fugitives.
So, Rob, what was that timeline stuff that you felt was off?
So my feeling was that Spartans weren't so well known by the innies as the Covenant showed up.
So they were.
Program. Okay.
Basically, the Spartan program operated for about 5 years before the beginning of the Human Covenant War, or at least a few years before the beginning of the Human Covenant War, which actually is established in Forward Unto Dawn, because in Forward Unto Dawn is basically the film that we watched beforehand. The Spartan program was active fighting insurrectionists for like 3 or 4 years, and they basically became a boogeyman.
But so people at the UNSC don't really know very much about it.
They know them as ghosts. Basically, they are like these nightmare creatures who people are fucking terrified of.
Oh, so this is like sort of like before the U.S. Army started publicizing the fact that like Delta Force existed or that like SEAL teams existed.
Exactly.
Like,
that is what we're looking. So, like for example, Noble Six, the protagonist of Halo Reach, is what is referred to as a hyper lethal vector, which is to say that Noble Six has assassinated like 150 or 160 insurrectionists and basically became like a living boogeyman. He sucks, or they suck. They're extremely good at murder. One of this was later retconned, but here's a little Noble Six fact. Noble Six and Master Chief are the only 2 Spartans to ever be designated as hyper lethal vectors, which is to say that they were so good at murder the UNSC had to make a new name for them.
Damn, HLVs?
I love that for them. We had to make up a rank for you. Oh, by the way, like. Again, to the theme of this being a surprisingly stacked cast, we don't see him because he's all armored up. But Bokeem Woodbine is in the show as one of the I think Spartans, right? Soren 6'6".
Yes, so I've the girl Spartans. Just a quick note: the girl Spartans are so hot. They're so pretty. Oh my god! Without the oh my god, they're so pretty. Rob, continue.
But Bokeem Woodbine, if you enjoyed season 2 of Fargo, for instance, where he is the sort of tip of the spear for the mob moving into Fargo.
Yeah.
He's the guy who is like running that entire like mafia, like mob invasion. And is the one who at the end gets what he wants, power and authority, and that means moving into the organized crime part of the business and leaving behind the crime lord trade. But he's a great performer, and so I'm excited to see what they do with him. Mike Milligan was his character's name in Fargo. However, for all as promising as all these things are, how did we feel about the first, let's say, third of the episode, the laying the groundwork and the attack? How did we feel about the big action sequence and the groundwork that they were laying at the start?
Bad.
Do we want to talk about the video game shots or?
I think those are the least egregious. I
Yeah,
think,
those are not bad. I think those are totally. I think those are totally fine.
I suppose you hated Doom.
Yes. What? The movie?
Yes.
I've never seen it.
Well,
I
which
assume
one?
it's
There's
bad.
two of them. There's 2 Doom films, actually. There's the one with Dwayne Johnson, and there's the one that they did a couple years back. It's a different movie. It doesn't have the first
The
one.
Dwayne Johnson one's surprisingly good. That's what I'm saying. My position is it's schlock, but it's actually
It's
pretty funny.
very good schlock. I'm with you, Rob.
I think that the smart thing that the show is doing with this first sequence, and if they follow through on it, will be really cool, is they were establishing the rules of combat in this show from here on out. They are giving us all of the puzzle pieces for how we are going to think about fights in this series from here on forward. The fact that just like in the video games, the like Master Chief's like recharging energy shield is an essential part of understanding how to play the video game Halo. The fact that Master Chief has a recharging energy shield is going to be an essential part of how we think about tactical engagements and combat going forward.
Do they communicate that effectively, though? I feel like
Only
it's
if
like
you've played the-
aesthetic flourishes.
Only
Yes,
if you
I'm with
played
you,
the game
Kato.
because the fucking noise happened.
I don't
It
think a
goes,
single person would be able to look
Yes,
at this
it does.
and
It
go,
does.
I know what's happening here.
Exactly.
Well, because no, I will push back against this, because if you look at the impact of the plasma bolts on the Spartan armor, there is a very clear an energy shield effect happening that
I agree with you that it's
break.
it's
that
there.
You watch break.
It's very
when,
light. I feel like if you showed
Yeah.
this to someone who's never seen Halo, they'd be like, "What's happening right now?" Because
It's like,
the
look at
only
this cool
real-
action sequence.
I
of
bet-
course, it's a sci-fi show. They have a glowy shield that occurs, but not
Right.
that it's like core to the character's identity and strategy.
Is it coming back? Like you can't tell that part until the bar shows up, but only I know to look for the bar because I've played these games before. Like I don't know.
I think people can.
Wait,
read-
is the bar in the
Yes.
first person?
Yeah.
Oh my god, that sucks. I don't like that at all.
That's what I'm saying.
So maybe I'm with Kato, but I didn't notice that part.
I feel like Rob and I are off in our own little are on the opposite side of this table right now.
So I will say, like, that stuff didn't bother me. I think here are a couple things that jumped out at me. One is all the innies have what has come to be like such a bog standard like production design in sci-fi shows, like in this era, which is like, how do you signal that it's the future, but it's like kind of rough and tumble. You give people shitty looking clothes with lots of like technical materials on them and then straps
Weird
galore.
layers.
Yeah, like that just kind of like, because it no longer reads like anything. It's not. It's kind of the dullest way to make like a setting read. But I think the big thing for me is, I think there's a challenge with Master Chief and the Spartans, like to illustrate what makes these guys so special, what makes them so deadly, because we see ultimately a camp full of like freedom fighters unloading full clips into Covenant. Doesn't even slow them down. Got him.
Can we talk about their positions within this fucking compound? Like,
oh, you mean the fact they're just waiting to get massacred?
yes,
And
they're just waiting in the fucking center.
No, they deserve what they fucking got.
Like being all on the walls, all the big guns are in the middle. Like they're just like, we're gonna be here for when they get through the doors. Like you gotta
These
let
are
them
some
through
strong.
the door.
Natalie Watson chose where the minigun goes.
Oh my God.
Components.
No,
She doesn't listen to the podcast.
do that.
I'm just saying, I played like 15 hours of Back 4 Blood and watched her pick different vantage points for that minigun to go, and I got some strong vibes of that in the Halo TV show.
I will say this: one issue with like budget limitations is that often we still think of like a fortified position as being a little like stockade, thin wall, and like that's how you mark like they're ready to like fight it out, and it's like. That hasn't been an effective deterrent in centuries, really. But also, yeah, the way they're preparing to fight this out is just wouldn't have worked against the UNSC. Definitely doesn't work against the Covenant. But either way,
Hey, I have a world question that I'm begging in the show.
I just want to finish.
Finish. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
But the thing is, Covenant still eat a lot of rounds. They get shot loads. The show doesn't communicate. Why do the Spartan guns just work? I'm sitting there. I'm like, if I were the UNSC or the Innies, I would simply buy the guns that work and use those, and maybe not like need the genetically modified child soldiers.
Can I answer this question?
It has a satisfying answer.
There is an answer to this question. That being the level of military technology that the UNSC has over the insurrectionists is astounding, because the rifles that the UNSC uses, I believe what the insurrectionists use are just like traditional gunpowder rifles.
Yeah.
If I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, basically carrying Kalashnikovs. Yeah.
Yes. So those are great against Marines, who they are preparing to fight for. The new generation of weapons technology that the Spartans use in the show is basically designed for special forces and for the Human Covenant War. And those are gas-powered, high-pressure rounds that are actually able to do significant amounts of damage to energy. This is
nothing in the show. It just looks like a fancier machine gun.
Yeah,
I know, but like.
At one point, he picks up the minigun that the insurrectionists were using and mows
Motherfucker,
down
it's a minigun.
three of them.
It's a minigun.
Why didn't they do that?
Powerful enough?
No, that is a minigun. Motherfucker, do you know how powerful a 50 caliber
I
round
know,
is?
but what I was saying,
They were
into
hosing
those
them
bullets.
down with it before.
Yeah,
And
what
it
I was
wasn't
saying is that the
working.
fucking...
Yeah, no.
What's the opposite of plot armor? Plot bullets.
It's true. I will know that the insurrectionist leader actually got he got several points on the board. That dude actually put numbers on the board.
Wait, how many kills? What was his body count?
I don't remember the exact number.
I
But when he
don't
was
think. I think he might have had assists.
Yeah.
I think he got blanked in the K column. I think he
had
got assists.
several assists. So there are two people who the show is like, these guys are actually getting numbers on the board. That being the professor, quote unquote, who was the grizzled insurrectionist.
He's named the professor.
His name was the professor, which is so fucking funny. The professor had numbers on the board, low numbers on the board until he got fucking murked. Because he was also using a higher caliber machine gun. And basically anyone who had a higher caliber weapon that had a good enough fire rate, that being the minigun or the light machine gun, was actually able to like break armor and do damage. But like pistol and rifle caliber rounds from before the Human Covenant War are like extremely, extremely ineffective.
Oh yeah, I'm
also,
a little bit. That's a great explanation. I appreciate it. I'm a little unsatisfied that the answer was higher velocity rounds did the trick, because that that is how firearms work. But I would
Also, the other thing is that the thing to note about energy shields, because you see at one point an elite get skewered.
Yeah.
Energy shields are actually really bad at handling the higher velocity something is hitting them with. So there's basically like a velocity floor and a velocity ceiling for them.
I'm so glad Ren is wired this way. This is exactly what I wanted.
In terms of their ability to like take hits. So basically the energy floor is if you have a knife, the reason that knives go through energy shields is because they aren't high enough velocity to create the feedback. Does that make sense? So like if there is like a field being created, they are not high enough velocity to basically generate the kinetic energy required.
I was just gonna say I
It's like-
saw that movie last year.
It's like, think of the way the conditions for a sonic boom to happen, right? Like you're pushing against air until
Right.
you break through the air. Like there needs to be a certain amount of force for it to push.
So that's why Chief can like put a pistol to the back of their head and they're just fucking done.
Yes, because it's going past the shield, and it is. So that's the one thing. That's also why the Spartan is able to impale them. But there's also basically like a velocity ceiling where you are doing actual damage. So small arms fire is right in the middle of that zone where you are basically doing, it is going slow enough where the energy shield is completely taking the hit and also not able to go through. But if you go faster, you can go through the energy shield by like basically beating it so much that eventually it like loses power because you're overtaxing the system, which is why you have to do either very slow weapons
sequence is great. That shows
or very
so much.
fast weapons.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
No, that's. But I will say, like, the way it presents to me is like they don't do a great job of showing like why are the Spartans effective.
Zero. Like even if there was like a throwaway line to like one of the innies that it's explaining like as they're terrified, like give the audience communicate like tangibly like what's occurring here, because it's all communicated through aesthetic, and I just think it fails aesthetically to communicate.
Yeah,
like they don't come across as particularly cool. It's just like I don't know. Here's like some poorly shot armor that kicks their asses, and I get to the end of it and I don't understand necessarily why they're super cool. I just know that they're the ones that beat them.
There is one shot that I do think is super cool. This whole fight is like pretty mid to me, with one exception. At the beginning of the fight, they are like wheeling in this truck, right? With the machine gun turret on it. And an elite just fucking shoulder checks it.
Okay, that was
and
awesome.
Flips that shit is so sick.
Well,
and
but
also, again,
that's the dad.
Yes.
He doesn't kill anyone before that. I don't think he there's any damage.
He's like firing shots.
No, look where Kato's looking. Kato is watching the tape.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Are you watching the tape?
You see some shots of the as they go in the doors. You see some shots missing, I guess.
They were minus 100 with that man on the floor.
And then that truck starts to move to like reposition or something and gets fucking owned. He kills no one. He has no kills. There's no damage being done here.
And also does a really good job of noting the differential between the Covenant and literally anyone else.
Yeah.
Well, I would say that's the one thing I will say like that sequence does do is like I think the CG on the Covenant's pretty shoddy and not super convincing, but
it's mid.
I do think it's like shot like well enough that you understand like why they're like I think the child shooting scene is excessive, but like really unnecessary.
And it doesn't happen to be. There are people getting hit by plasma rifles and plasma pistols throughout the rest of this fucking fight. No one else.
Yeah,
fucking explodes.
I didn't need the like they actually
yes,
wanted
they
to be
do.
unusually cruel to the children.
People are exploding left and right. At one point, someone fires an energy pistol into an elite, and it takes off the top quarter of its body. It is grim.
I think it is. Maybe it is because Patrick had prepared the ground. But I also think there's a fine line in sequences like this between horrifying and hilarious. And it can go, like, it can be very dicey. And maybe you don't even know how it's going to read until you're, like, deep in editing or, like, when it goes before the audience. But this ended on the side of actually being very funny to me.
I agree.
Because, like, the shot where, like, the kid just explodes and Quan is just like, what? Just covered in gore.
Never gets that. That takes a long time to get that blood off, too. It has, like, 3/4 of the episode still has her friends.
3/4?
Like,
I think she ends the episode with blood on her.
And it's the way they explode. If you've seen the video of the whale exploding, it's like that, where it's just body parts like going for miles every time they get hit. And
they're not going for something cartoonish, right? Like it is meant to be shocking.
Hold on.
I
just had a fucking galaxy brain thought. They were doing drugs that were some sort of like
no, Kato, I'm not going here with you.
No,
That
it's called heavy
as
hydrogen.
she did high as fuck.
It's called heavy hydrogen. Like Does that?
And all the kids are doing huffs of it. It's called heavy hydrogen, and
I'm
it is
just
the new
saying,
rage.
hydrogen is explosive. Maybe the plasma, that's why they explode,
No, the rest
and the
of that
other humans are
colony
just
Oh
was-
kind of
shit!
like
Wait,
falling
actually,
over.
that's amazing. Wait. What if them kids are all like little fucked up, tiny, drugged out Hindenburgs, and every time they eat around, and that's why they are comically detonating while the adults are not, because the adults
The adults are getting hit in
sober.
the chest, and like there's like a bright spot, and they fall over. Like instead of
Also, the entire sequence with the kids like going off in their little pastoral forest idyll to go harvest drugs.
yeah,
Also, the vibe is like, it's very Hobbiton in some ways.
Yeah,
like the
it's-
entire thing has like fucking Fellowship of the Ring like energy. The kids all seem like little asshole hobbits, and so it's just kind of like the fact that Quan is like, "Hey assholes, we need to run back to town," and they're like, "Nah, I want to go see the ship." Like the entire thing just ended up registering as funny to me. I'm not sure it was meant to, but it's so over the top. It is like when in Prometheus, when the Surja 2 birthing sequence in Prometheus.
Oh,
It is so horrible, but it keeps going and it loops all the way back around to this is so horrible, it's hilarious, right? Like we kept being like, and what else would be fucked up to happen here? That's how the sequence unfolds.
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did everyone feel about the color grading in the show? Because that is something that I've been trying to put my finger on, because I would describe the show as hypersaturated.
yes.
It's,
And
it's hypersaturated and,
yellow.
also higher. It's hypersaturated and high
Hypersaturated over a
contrast.
dull palette.
Yeah, it's hypersaturated over a dull palette, and also it's high contrast. So it's
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
hypersaturated high contrast, which is I think interesting at the very least.
Is
And I was
that how they're
curious-
trying to match the Covenant and get them into this world?
Right.
Because if we think about the
Yes.
the CG
Yes.
of the way these guys look, they look like they fit in the world in a weird way, despite them taking on the challenge of the most unforgivable lighting for CG action sequences, which is like
Yeah.
full daylight, top down. Nothing looks good in that light in a lot of shows. It's really tough to make that look good. But I do wonder if, the aesthetic of the show is meant to sort of make it look less like even the Halo series, the Halo jump out as the Covenant jump out in the games as like really bright Muppety looking characters in a world that feels a little more grounded. And I feel like maybe the color grading is what they're trying to do to make it feel like, these beings inhabit the same space as these people.
It's the color grading in Halo 2. If you go to Halo 2
Yeah.
and look at the city streets of Halo 2, there is like a relatively muted actually like city design and like relatively like gray and brown city design with extremely bright Covenant troops spread throughout, and that hypersaturation kind of extends to everything that is not explicitly like gray. And it is at the very least a very distinctive aesthetic. I had at one point a friend look at the show and be like, "Oh, the show looks like Doctor Who in terms of like CGI quality." But I was like, here's the problem. I can never read it as looking like Doctor Who because the show's like frame rate, its camera frame rate and color grading is so completely divorced from something like Doctor Who, which is what I associate with like a very particular style of color grading and like camera speed. That like I can't even make the comparison because the shows look so fundamentally different to me.
I think in the later seasons of like the modern Who, there's definitely a similar like oversaturation going on. But yeah, it's like weird. It also like it jumped. It felt like it was extra saturated while they were out in the forest, and then like the attack and the like other stuff like it like pulls it back a little bit. Like I don't know. It was very strange, and I think not helped by the fact that I was watching it on my TCL TV, which apparently has issues already. But it felt also like the combination of saturation and contrast made it feel like it had like a sharpness filter on it as well. But it was really just those two things being really weird.
So I think it all shows up worse in this opening sequence. I
Yeah.
think where it actually starts to come together a little bit in terms of presentation is probably when we go back to the more classically sci-fi environs of the UNSC and aboard ship maybe where it looks less egregious.
I think the UNSC looks great.
Yeah, I think that stuff and this for me is where the episode starts to come together. But actually, this opening sequence is where I want to talk a little bit about Forward Unto Dawn.
Yes.
Because I think this is where the contrast is most notable. So Forward Unto Dawn is a series of, I think it was released as like webisodes ages ago, but it basically comes out to being like a 90-minute Halo movie.
For Halo 4, specifically.
Yeah.
When they're doing the pass off from Bungie to 343.
And it opens on like Master Chief is floating through space. Cortana is like undergoing the early stages of rampancy. And that stuff is well executed, but ultimately it's the origin story for like a major supporting character, Captain Lasky. And we go back to his days in the military academy for the UNSC at the Corbillo Academy of Military Science. And it is one half of a, military military academy story. With a little weird world of children being trained to be little warriors and little fascists for this government. But then it also is a horror movie as the Covenant begin to appear. And I think one of the things that like jumps out at me in terms of the contrast here, I've always felt Forward Unto Dawn is one of the smartest ways to go about adapting Halo. It's also smart because it's working around some pretty clear limitations in terms of like budget and resources they can bring to bear. And the solution that Forward Unto Dawn goes with is that in the early stages of like the Covenant War, the Covenant are just monsters. They are so lethal and so overpowering that they are basically just cutting through anything in their path, like a hot knife through butter, basically. There's nobody can stand against them. And then the other thing we get here, and this is like, how do you make, to the point we're just making it, like, how do you make the Spartans seem special? Forward Unto Dawn builds toward I don't know if you got this far, Patrick, but after the Covenant sort of arrive on the planet and all hell breaks loose, we never actually get a very good look at what Master Chief can do. We get little tastes of it, but our experience of it through the human scale characters is that everything happens blindingly fast. And Master Chief can navigate this lethal world against these like implacable monsters. And for him, it all happens very slow. And so when he is glimpsed through the eyes of these characters, he takes on the heroic proportions of the games because he can stand against this force. And for them, it's incomprehensible. The difference in speed.
It sounds like they almost treat, I didn't get this far, but it almost seems like they're taking the way like a slasher film treats its villain, like over the course of like a 3 arc, which is like you get glimpses and your mind creates an imagination of what this thing is before it's actually brought into view.
So yeah, this is actually the structure of the film because the moment, so this again takes place at the beginning of the Human Covenant War. And so Spartans are still classified because Spartans remain classified until the Covenant become a threat. Right, because basically the UNSC is like, for the most part, Spartans remain classified until the Covenant become a threat, at which point the UNSC is like, okay, cool, we have to turn these from spec ops soldiers, who we never talk about and never acknowledge the existence of, into basically poster children for the UNSC military. And so what happens is there's a shot where there's a couple of scenes where kids are decrypting classified intel.
It's so cool.
And they decrypt it, and it's basically this sequence where it's a helmet recording of insurrectionists and Marines fighting alongside one another. And then for 3 seconds, there was a Spartan on screen. And they realize that the person that the camera feed they're seeing is a Spartan's camera feed because one of them goes, holy fucking shit, that person is 2 feet taller than that Marine. Because Spartans are canonically 7.5 feet tall minimum. And so someone's just towering over. And then the reflection of a helmet. So the Spartan is introduced as like this mythical slasher villain who is like massive and hulking and incredibly powerful in a way that no one else in the series is. And they are a boogeyman first. First, it is like the boogeyman is, what is a Spartan? What is this thing that is doing this like harm, right? And then the show reveals the next part of the footage, which shows an elite reflected in the visor of someone.
It's
And-
such a well executed shot too, because it is so blurry and pixelated. But like again, the shape of the elite's sword is so like iconic at this point that it does look like if you were assembling, just blowing up a small frame from like a live leak footage of like combat like this. This is the hint you would get as to what is out there.
Yes, and like both of them, it means that both of them are being introduced as their respective slasher villains at the same time. And like the establishing work for how dangerous elites are is done in the same breath as how powerful Spartans are. Because in the fiction of the series, Spartans and elites are Spartans have a slight advantage, but Spartans and elites are actually pretty close in terms of efficacy across the board.
Not according to my playthroughs of Halo.
Well, so this is the thing, right? Is I think Halo is, you look around in Halo and you see Marines running around with similar weapons to you. You use their rifles and everything. Why are you so good? The answer is
I can take them from them.
Yeah.
Here, take my pistol, buddy.
The answer is you're a video game hero, right? But like, I think the way that Forward Unto Dawn literalizes this is like, no. Like, if you think about it, first-person shooter heroes are weird because the people can hold a gun at the ready position endlessly and never get tired, which is just like ridiculous. But they can just do that forever. They can run forever. Master Chief in this world can do all those things. He is a video game character in a world of mortals. And like nobody else can like match that.
Yeah, it's also worth noting that like the part of the canonical, like not to lore dump again, but by the point of Halo 1, every other Spartan is dead. Or at the very least missing in action. Master Chief is the last remaining Spartan on the record by Halo 1.
That's why we should play Reach, Gato.
Reach is really good.
Because the Human Covenant
Play
War
all of them.
is going really fucking badly. The war is going so fucking badly because of the degree to which humanity is outclassed. Spartans can take out elites, but like a good squad of elites will kill a fucking Spartan. Like it is... Spartans have to win through guerrilla tactics and through like a particular style of training. But in terms of like actual power, Spartans and elites are like pretty equal to each other, which is why Master Chief is this exception to the rule, because he is basically the sole survivor of his class of Spartans until it is later revealed that a couple of them were like in cryo storage. And like there are a few more Spartan 2s exist. And this gets worse for the subsequent generations of Spartans, Spartan 3s and 4s, which are straight up equal to elites in terms of their like actual physical abilities. They are 1-to-1. So like Spartan 3 are who you play as in Halo Reach. That is the second generation of official Spartans. And then Spartan 4s are like a Locke in Halo 5 and the Halo 4 characters. Which are like different ways of making Spartans that basically every generation of Spartans basically takes a dip in power level in accordance to how many war crimes it takes to make them. Like,
Jesus.
you lose strength. Like the amount of war crimes it takes to train a Spartan is equal to how strong they are.
You have to infuse your Spartan with enough war crimes to make them good.
Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Same thing with your AI.
There's one thing I wanted to bring up though from Forward Unto Dawn, and Patrick, I think you saw more of this part, but it is the like, I think they have a contrast in world building here too, like in terms of what's the UNSC, what's its relationship to the world, what's happening with this independence movement. To me, I find the hints we get of the state of the world in Forward Unto Dawn maybe a little more interesting and certainly better rendered than the like exposition dump we get crammed into the opening of the Halo pilot, even though it's working within similar time constraints. And I'm curious, like, did it hit differently for you? Like, did sort of going within the world of this little like cloistered military academy, like, make the world of Halo seem a little more like real and interesting to you than like the pilot of this TV show did?
Well, it's just funny because I have played all of the campaigns of the Halo games, and yet could not really tell you. Those games never fully communicate. Like these shows are saying, like, man, look, this fascism is bad. I mean, you know, they're the good guys, I guess. They're fighting this war, but like none of that's present in the games. I'm sure it like is in books and I can read about it on terminals, but like the games are, you are a superhero fighting the Covenant and you got these Marines and they back you up. Hoorah, let's go get them. And the most interesting part of the Paramount Halo show is all the non-Master Chief stuff. It's like everything that's like taking place on the ship. It's like learning about, like actually putting a face to like this rebellion, which does not occur in the games at all, whatsoever. Not present. Like, not a thing the show is interested in other than as like world building of like a thing that's occurring, but is not particular to the MacGuffin that you are chasing in the X number of Halo game. And so Forward Unto Dawn, forwarding that because like quite literally they don't have the budget to like pull off like what you can do, what they're trying to do in the Halo show. I still find those elements to be far more interesting and wish Master Chief, the Spartans existed at the periphery, so that their presence was surprising and shocking. And so I understand why the show opens with this bombastic action sequence that separating my problems with like this prevalence of TV shows trying to be movies and then not like working within the constraints of a TV show. And is that I find all the politics and the world building, I'd rather have 50 minutes of that and then 10 minutes at the end of like, fuck, like, you know, I would have actually like chopped this episode in a half in a different way, like put all the Master Chief reveal action sequence at the end after we've done the table setting for, you know, they do some of that in the beginning where it's like, damn, like Spartans are scary as shit, man. It's like, but why? Like, you can tell me that, but you have to show it to me. And I don't think that action sequence communicates that. And so that's why I found myself, I think the second half of the pilot is like far more interesting, or it's, I guess it's, well, before like they start crash landing back on like base, like on Reach, like the sequence in which like Master Chief and what's the character's name, the survivor, Ron, like their conversation they have about like her mother, I think is like really effective. I think Mr. Chief switches a little too quick from like, I will terminate anyone in front of me on any order to I will protect this woman at all costs and I'm going to go against the government. But all that stuff I think is way more interesting and I wish the show was built around it and maybe we'll get there. But I'm far more inclined to think that we're in store for like mediocre action sequences and like little bits of like I feel like the innies are gone after the pilot. And that would be a tragedy because I think that and the relationship to the UNSC is the stuff that I find interesting, partially because it's so absent from the games, because the games are about the MacGuffins.
Oh, please, Scott.
Well, I was going to ask, like, to the point of him swapping kind of quickly for you, Patrick, I also felt that way, and I was wondering whether or not, like, that, like, does this thing with his memories and, like, his past come up in the games ever at all? Like, is that later pulled upon?
There is, like, there's an intro
because it feels
where, like...
Well, just very, like, what it feels like to me is that they're pulling on a thing, and the reason it's quick is because they expect people who've played this game to be the people watching it. So they're like, don't worry about it. Like, you understand us. This is why this is happening. But is that true? Is that something that, having played the games, it's like, this makes sense? Or is it just like, no, they made that sort of like ideological switch in Master Chief a little too quickly because they did it in the span of the first episode, right? Like,
well, Master Chief doesn't have an ideological switch in the video games.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does. 100%. This is Halo 5. You are describing Halo 5.
Oh, you know what? Then fuck off. Like,
no, I will not fuck off. Okay. Actually, I have
the game doesn't exist.
That is the most wrong fucking shit I've ever. Halo 5 is the best campaign in the series. Moving on.
Wow. Truly, we do have a 22-year-old on the staff.
I am a motherfucker. I will fight you in the streets.
I wouldn't show up to the fight, Ren. You'd be fighting ghosts.
This entire series. I know this series like the back of my fucking hand. Okay, so the thing is. Sorry, I got real heated there for a sec.
Halo 5 does that to people.
Oh my god. This game is a mirror of Halo 5. Sorry, this show is a mirror of a lot of the plot beats of Halo 5 and the most interesting parts of Halo 5. Halo 5 and Halo Reach are the two games which actually do show the insurrectionists. One of the major levels in Halo 5 actually takes place on a insurrectionist planet where basically Spartans have landed and the people there are like, motherfucker, you cannot build a military base here. you cannot build a military base here. And then the Covenant show up and it's a whole thing. But it's actually like a pretty cool dynamic. But hey, the whole premise of Halo 5 is that Master Chief goes rogue because of Cortana. And because of the particular relationships that those two characters have. And then Halo Infinite is then dealing with the emotional ramifications of that and of that betrayal, which is why in Halo 5, Master Chief is pretending to be a weird robot again, because he actually has a lot of like personal development in Halo 4 and Halo 5 as he comes into the fact that like, I was a human, I was raised as this super soldier by this person who has now betrayed me twice. Because Cortana is a brain clone of Dr. Catherine Halsey. Cortana is based off of Halsey, which, okay, this is, there are debates over whether or not this is a spoiler. I had with a friend. So technically this may be a spoiler for the Halo TV series. Maybe, kind of. I don't think it's a spoiler,
ahead,
but Chuck.
We all know that.
Okay. No. It's not the fact that Cortana is a copy of Halsey. It's the mechanics by which that happens, because the show actually is doing my favorite piece of Halo lore, which is like useful in understanding the narrative arc of Master Chief.
Hold on. Maybe I don't want to know this right now.
You have all the clues, Mr. Policeman.
Can we hold on? Let's pause it, because I do think there's a good chance that, for better or worse, we're probably going to watch this entire show and then revisit this.
Oh yeah.
So,
Well,
I
it is. There's a fascinating little nugget.
I think you got to hold on it, because I think
I will hold
there's a
on it.
lot of hinting they're doing about Halsey stuff, like in this pilot, that like we should at least let play out a little bit.
Yeah, there are rules about how AIs are made in this series that are fucking sick as shit. And so, basically, the show is doing a lot of the plot beats of Halo 5, where Master Chief is going rogue, and also Halo Infinite by proxy, because in Infinite, Master Chief is kind of coming back to the UNSC, kind of not. He's in a weird middle zone after Halo 5. And so it is jumping to the point in his narrative where he is actually questioning the UNSC, which is also worth noting that the emotional trauma that Spartans undergo actually does lead to a lot of them going rogue. In fiction, this is not a rare thing to have happen, because the moment that the reality of their raising clicks for them, some of them are like, what the fuck? Master Chief is unique insofar as that he doesn't. Master Chief is a well-controlled dog. It is one of my favorite things about this show, actually, is the way that UNSC members talk about Master Chief. I think it's actually really fascinating, because they talk about him like a weapon. Like, they talk about him like a robot in a way that is actually, like, interesting in the way it dehumanizes the character.
Even makes that joke about himself.
Yeah, he's like, I eat bolts.
That was pretty good.
The fact that he fails to make a joke is extremely Master Chief, because that is like his whole thing in Halo Infinite is like trying to make jokes and fucking failing as other people are like, dude, what is wrong with you? And then he gets sad. But this is all to say that the narrative arc in the show is designed to mirror that in 5 and Infinite, which is to say, like, this is actually pretty well established, and like that Master Chief has questions about how he was made and like how he was raised is like central to the narrative arc of the like 343 era of the series.
And like, oh so my God, like, if that is true,
right?
Like, I find the storytelling in 4 and 5 to be so horrendous that like if that is the case, like I'm sure the beats that you're talking about sound like, every time I've like read about Halo 4 or 5, I'm like, that does sound kind of interesting. And then I think about the experience of playing those games and I go, that was some of the least fun I've ever had in the series, to the point that I didn't want to play it anymore after 5, because I found it so distressing.
I'm so convinced that the well of Halo 5 and 4 was poisoned by the community, and poisoned by like the public response to them, because I have replayed those games recently.
It and it's poor storytelling, I think is what you meant to say. I was not destroyed by the public like reaction to those games. I played them before they came out, and I disliked them.
I stand. I will, motherfuck, not you specifically. I think we have to go through this entire series. We're getting to the point where we're hitting this point where like we have to go through this entire video game series.
I would do some lore adjacent thing, but I will not replay that entire franchise. I reject.
Rob.
I will continue my journey. Mhm.
How far are you?
I'm like probably halfway through Halo 1. I just haven't played it in a
Okay.
few weeks. But like, got to do Halo Wars.
Oh, well,
Gotta
all
be
right
Halo
now.
Wars.
You do.
Now,
Gotta
Eddie,
read
Dude,
Terrence
you-
Travis' novels.
Kyle, that is Rob is correct. Halo Wars 1 and 2 are essential to the fucking narrative. The main
This is how you
villain of
end up
Halo
saying
Infinite
Halo
is
5
established.
is interesting. Is like where Ren is at. I get
Yeah.
it's like you got to read these 3 books, and like they're
You don't
very
have to read the
interesting. Okay.
I might read the books though anyway.
I have copies if you want to borrow them.
Oh, you don't need the books.
Yeah, I'll be-
Guys,
I'll be-
if you want
I'll
to
be back
borrow
down
them,
soon.
my God.
I mean, I read the novelization of Halo, The Flood, by William Dietz. It was actually surprisingly effective.
Have you read Fall of
novelization.
Reach?
Pardon?
Have you read Fall of Reach?
No.
Okay.
I figure
'cause
I don't
Fall
want to
of-
read that until I've played Reach.
No, well, because actually, Fall of Reach doesn't actually
You're
focus
never
on.
gonna play Reach. This
Hey,
notion that you're gonna play
Patrick,
these games is
Patrick.
lewd. I will pay you to do it. Start a Patreon for Rob to
Fucking-
play them because it won't happen otherwise.
I believe in my friend and colleague Rob Zachney.
Man, the 3MA gang will be pissed when just one day that Patreon is shut down and it's been converted over into my Halo, Patreon. Like, hey Len, hey Rowan, hey Troy, you guys gotta figure this out because I'm doing Halos now. Anyway, we're gonna take a quick break. I'm back to talk about the rest of the series. Okay, so there is a thing I actually do want to call out here. We're talking about like Master Chief's motivations. I think the thing that actually is surprisingly effective is the fact that in that beat where Quan and Master Chief are having their sort of first conversation, and she explains that he killed her mom. Like he raided.
It's good. It's the
Yep.
most effective sequence in the entire pilot, I think.
He raided a combination union organizing committee meeting and independence, like revolutionary organizing, like meeting, and fucking like massacred everybody.
Yeah.
And
I love the bullshit like cover story that there was an insurrectionist bomb at the.
And he
this is-
points it
And
out.
he
like,
knows
oh,
it's
yes,
bullshit.
yeah.
He's like,
This is-
well, that's why the
Where-
arc works. Is because Master Chief's like, this is all bullshit. I know it's bullshit, but I
So-
just need one thing to push me over.
But I think it also like some credit goes to Pablo Schreiber's like delivery of that, where she says like, I never believed that story because why would the insurrectionists? And he's like, he completes the thought, why would the insurrectionists like bomb their own meeting? It's clearly been like nagging at him,
Right.
and I think it's a tough like. There's a lot of physicality to the performance because for most of this episode he has to be like armored up in that suit, so he's going to have to like through gestures like impart things and a lot through like intonation. I think Paul Schreiber does a pretty decent job here as far as like being Master Chief. Also, I guess this guy was I think he was the little like shitty Sabatka in Wire season 2. I think he might have been the guy who like had the fucking duck, the screw up, like who just everything goes wrong like throughout season.
What?
Yeah, no, he is one of the Sabatkas from Wire season 2. And the only one I can think of where the age matches up is
Nick.
that he's like
Yeah, Nick
I think he's the
Sabaka.
career fuck up in season 2. So like there's that. But yeah, like I think
Wait.
he what?
No, never mind. Never mind.
But I think he seems like a good Master Chief. How did the moment though where he takes his helmet off land for you? Like the race to humanize this character, is that working for you?
Didn't.
I feel like his voice got better with the helmet off, but otherwise it was not good. I feel like he sounded more like Master Chief once the helmet was off, but
I'm curious, Ren, you shook your head where it didn't work. I'm curious, both elaborating on that and then also as our Wikipedia page, like where this lines up with how like John is like described as like I've forgotten all that stuff. It's been
He's
too
the
long,
right
like-
age.
Okay.
Like Master Chief is very rarely described as a person without the helmet. Like that's part of the thing is that like John 117 or Master Chief is unique, is almost unique among the Spartans because he is Halsey's pet. He is Halsey's pet project, and because of that, the degree of dehumanization that Master Chief is subject to is on even a different level from the other Spartans. And I think that like the reason that I kind of get frustrated by the moment where he takes his helmet off is that like in the chronology of the series, he should be this old. From a narrative perspective, I would be significantly more interested in the dynamic between him and Quan if he was younger, because I'm not interested in a surrogate dad story. I'm just not interested in that here. And there is I think that like Forward Unto Dawn actually does this significantly better, because the reveal in Forward Unto Dawn is that a group of Spartans rescue these like military academy kids, and then they are sitting in the Pelican flying back to base. Master Chief leaves his helmet on, but the other two take theirs off. And when the Spartans take their helmets off, they reveal that they are both 17 years old. Max.
Not just that, but like a weird age of 17. Like
yes,
they look
age,
like
yes.
they look like they were abducted to like ferry and like taken
because they're 7 feet tall.
Yeah.
They're 7 feet tall 16-year-olds, and they take off their helmets and they look young. Because they are, because at the beginning of the Human Covenant War, this is the beginning of the Human Covenant War. They are 15, 16 years old. And that reveal is fucking crushing to everyone else in that Pelican, because they are looking at their peers and realizing that like, oh, we don't work in this war anymore. Like people like us don't matter anymore because of Spartans. The difference is so vast. And Master Chief keeps his helmet on. The reason at the moment the Master Chief takes his helmet off in this show doesn't work for me is that there's no reveal to it. The reveal is not that this is a young person. It is like you see what you expect when he takes the helmet off. This is a man who is in a war. That's it, right? This is an adult man who is in a war and not a character who is like forced into this situation. And so it lands way, way worse. And I also think that like if he was younger, the relationship between him and Quan and like the parallels that the show is making between these two characters would be significantly more interesting.
In Forward Unto Dawn, the Lasky character is paired with, at first she seems like she might be a surrogate mom, but actually it turns out to be more of a surrogate big sister, which I think is maybe more the interesting dynamic where the like assistant dean of the school is like his mentor, who's kind of like trying to not convince him to stay at the academy, but trying to convince him to make a choice. Whether like this is the other thing that I kind of dig about like Forward Unto Dawn is that, so right now, for instance, with the exception of Master Chief, everyone in this series seems like, wow, the UNSC is just like wall to wall, like shit heels. Like even Miranda Keyes is mostly like, we're not really killing a kid. Yep, we are. Okay. Yeah. One of the things I kind of dig again about Forward Unto Dawn is that I think it captures very well, and maybe it's just also reflecting the era in which it's made, but like being on the inside of an imperial conflict and the range of opinions that form around that, where you have people who become like rabid hawks who are just like pissed off that like the enemy continues to resist, and so therefore what they could only be doing that if they really hate us and want us all dead. But then you have Lasky, who is kind of like an anti-war or war skeptic soldier, right? Who's like sort of stuck here because society has hammered him into this template.
And his parents, right? Like the whole like setup of
right.
Forward Unto Dawn is that they are the children of like these elite like admin, like in the space program back on Earth.
Right. But it's basically like almost like feudal as well, because like all these kids are inheriting, like they're very clear about it at the academy, where it's like, because all of you are the children of the elites of the UNSC, you are going to be the future elites of the UNSC.
I think there's a line where he, not long after he does his first like sort of like protest, like I forget what his last name is, but like, or like his mother's name, and they're like, like, do you think we're not going to let you leave here without a degree? Like you just have to figure it out. Like, and it, and it's not they're going to make it easy on him, but it's like, you will leave here a soldier that wants to go continue the lineage because that's why you're here.
I think the other interesting part of Forward Unto Dawn as a comparison point here is the other reason, like Forward Unto Dawn's perspective character is Lasky, right? Lasky is also a character who cannot be what the military wants him to be in this iteration and has to become something else. That's part of why the reveal of the Spartans in the Pelican at the end of that movie is so good. Because the Spartans take their helmets off and reveal that they're 16-year-olds facing these other 16-year-olds. Lasky can't do cryosleep.
Mm-hmm.
That's like one of the premises of the film is that he is physically unable to go into cryosleep, so he can't be an ODST. There is the kind of soldier that he was being trained to be that his brother is, or was. He cannot be. And so he has to be something else because that is the only role he can functionally fulfill in this war. And that is not just true of him, that is true of everyone, but it is like the most true of him because the show is using
It's
this
physically
allergy.
literal.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is physically literal that he can't do this, which is the literalization of the shift that is taking place in this war from regular ass people being able to fight in this conflict to not, because they are physically unable to do the kinds of things that you need to do to be in this war.
Yeah, like I think that stuff ends up in terms of like the like, and again, it's because this pilot spends so much energy on an action sequence and then the big climax of a threat of an action sequence, there isn't a lot of room for this kind of characterization. I feel like I know a lot about every character in Forward Unto Dawn. Basically, like I know that trainee squad pretty well. Also, like it's a really strong cast in that. Like everyone does a lot with their small character details. Here, it's very much like name, role, we're gonna move on and we'll flesh them out later. And the only ones who seem to have like some real personality are mostly like Halsey, who the defining characteristic is like kind of an unethical snake. And like,
oh my God.
And then like Chief, who is a conflicted, like, what if RoboCop did the RoboCop thing for years in the first movie before like showing a trace of humanity?
Which is more likely, frankly, than what happens in RoboCop.
Well,
You
also,
could
like,
even- I was gonna say you could even tell that the production knew it was a little rushed to characterize these people by in like the first third of it, how many times they say people's names over and over, like back to back to back, like how many times they said like everyone said Kwan's name in that scene.
That's ADR responding to focus testing.
Yeah.
I also do think that the reveal that like not the reveal. I the reason that I think that Master Chief's characterization works is because the reveal is not that like the memory reveal is what works for me because it is like the reason that characterization doesn't completely miss is the knowledge that he was raised from 5 years old. And he literally does not have memories of that time beforehand. So like in that context, the rapid switch in characterization kind of lands for me because it is a breakthrough moment where basically someone who has only known violence, who has only known this military academy, it is the first moment where anything else even exists in his mind. It is the first fragment of something else beyond this particular war. And so the rapid characterization shift lands for me because it's like he already had questions regarding the bombing, but he couldn't ask them because he did not even have the basic toolkit of empathy and like human connection required to begin asking those questions. The moment he has his memories back, even just a fragment of them, his whole foundation collapses.
I guess, but
I
I mean,
feel like
but then
part
it's just
of
like
the-
what he touched a Forerunner, like
Okay, I hate the
googly-doo.
Forerunner thing.
Like it's like he touched what is clearly a Forerunner, like
Also, he
piece of
knew about it as a
technology, and then
kid?
he, huh?
It's implied
okay,
that
so
he knew about it as a kid. He makes a little
the drawing it as a kid, I push back. I think that is the show doing the thing that people do with Vision sometimes is like
Sure.
is
It's
like, okay, this is a tweaking of the memory to be able to incorporate this aspect of
I feel like that's a very what's the word I'm looking for? Not good faith, but like a very charitable reading of that, because I feel like we're gonna get some backstory bullshit where like somehow
Damn, he's known about the Forerunners.
He's known about the
all along.
Forerunners
I mean, we'll
all
see.
along.
Like,
Exactly.
this is-
That's why his
worried
body
that is
chemistry
where we
was
are
responding to
racing
that,
straight to.
Well, okay.
And like, here's
so-
the thing. Here's the
Jesus
thing too.
Christ.
Is like, I feel you about like the motivate, like the way that it happens. I think is as far as like how the switch happens for him feels okay. How it happens, but not the time span in which it happens. Almost because it feels like we're pulling on a lot of history of the video game series and understanding how the Spartans were made, at least like through like cultural osmosis. Like, I don't even know that much. I know that they were child soldiers. Like, I knew that much at least, but I feel like somebody watching this for the first time, it's not going to sink in the span of this one episode, right? Like they had to do too much in this first episode, just like from like a storytelling perspective. If you have no context coming in, I don't think it works. I feel like they needed maybe do one more episode to try to like,
So,
like, bridge
honestly,
the divide.
I think my favorite version of like the opening, I think a lot now, a thing I hated at the time, but think is genius now, season 1 of The Expanse, where for literally like 10 episodes of their run, you're like, what's the story here? Like, what actually is the plot that I'm watching? What are we doing? Because mostly what they're doing is they're like playing out small plot threads in a bunch of different directions. But mostly they're assembling a huge picture of like, here's the world that exists.
Right.
And I think, and hopefully like in the coming episodes of this, they're going to start like fleshing out that world and building these connections. But the fact that they were obliged to open with like huge gun battle and then huge emotional like stakes around this mutiny, which doesn't just have like Chief going rogue, but also has Halsey playing this card that like feels like maybe it's a big card to play for the pilot episode, where it's like, by the way, the Spartans are ready to rock on my command and not yours.
Yeah.
Like there,
I mean, it is kind of pilot syndrome, right? Where you're trying to stuff so many, like, I mean, go watch lots of pilots, especially like sci-fi in general. Like, it's hard.
Battlestar opened on basically a movie, like
Right.
4 standalone episodes that like,
Yes.
yeah.
It's just difficult, you know, like it's difficult to judge. I mean, there's like, you're right to be cynical, but also it's difficult to judge television shows on their pilots because historically they're just bad, especially when we exist in the current space where like whole seasons are like conceived of and like, and a pilot is a mini movie. And I think this is like a pretty poor like mini movie, but it has enough threads that like, I do think you can hold on to, be like, they could do something out of this.
Right.
They've already been greenlit for season 2.
The
so, like,
second
that gives me
episode
a
needs to
little
be
more
Ren
hope.
explaining why all of this is good. They actually like literally they need Ren like this week on Halo. Ren comes out and it's like, so you may have seen some confusing things.
Yeah, I'm looking at this show and basically I recognize the thing that really excited me about this episode, because I have mixed feelings on the show overall. I think that like as a total product, despite my love for the series and like how enthusiastic I am about the things I like about the show, I think like as a total product and like as a piece of storytelling, it's pretty mid. However, as someone who knows the series well, the pieces that they are putting on the board and that I am recognizing when I'm looking at the state of the world, the current state of the setting, the relationship between Halsey and the UNSC, the relationship between Oni and the UNSC, because they're actually, this is a key Halo note that the show is touching on but has not fully established yet. There are 2 branches. There are 2 primary branches of the human military. Oni, the Office of Naval Intelligence, and the United Nations Space Command, the UNSC. Spartans aren't part of the UNSC. They're part of Oni. And so the strained relationship between Oni and the UNSC is one of the core conflicts of like Halo the games, and like Reach is fully about the conflict between whether or not the UNSC or Oni has control over the Spartans, because basically over the course of the series, Oni gets more and more control over the military, and the Oni is the series like CIA equivalent. And so like as the series goes on, the CIA gets more and more fucking control over the military, and they get more and more fucked as time goes on. And like I see all those pieces on the board. The fact that Miranda Keyes is here and is saying the things that she is saying, pieces on the board. The shot of Halsey. And then it goes to the clone egg. That shit is like knowing what that is and the dramatic irony that the show is setting up is like so fucking exciting to me and is making the show so much more interesting, because I think that like all of the ways in which, I mean, part of it has to do with the way I approach media, whereas like spoilers don't work on me, because the more information I have, the more pieces I can go into a story with, and I can see the construction of the story. And for me, the construction of the story is itself like emotionally satisfying. And seeing that construction play out is emotionally satisfying. And so having this dramatic irony going into the series and knowing the pieces that are being put on the board is just like, I am legitimately very excited, even though I think this episode was like kind of mid. And by kind of mid, I mean extremely mid. I am like thrilled about the promise of like what episode 2 looks like.
Yeah.
Especially with Halsey. I think they're doing a characterization of Halsey that is so fucking good and accurate. Not only like lore accurate, but also like an interesting character. It is showing all of the things about Halsey that make her worth watching. And worth being interested in. Her like weird empathy for the Spartans, her complete refusal to follow basic command, her weird relationship to both like Forerunner artifacts, but also these like weird fucked up kids she has raised. It's just like it's so beyond excellent. I'm legitimately very excited.
And we didn't have to see that shitty looking Cortana in the pilot. So like that's great. You know, that was just a very nice treat by the show that we didn't even have to deal with that.
I really did enjoy when the shot of like the Spartans moving through the crowd of soldiers who've all responded to like build this cordon around a chief's ship, and the way they part, like Moses is parting the sea as these Spartans move through, but like no violence breaks out at the end of this episode. But I do enjoy when the guy's planning the breaching charges on the ship.
And he looks back and realizes,
and the Spartans are their weapons ready, and like there is a moment that passes between them where it is the realization that they are not there to kill Master. They are not going to open fire on Chief. This is a threat, and like that is the tension that is the core of the show, is the relationship between Oni and the UNSC that is fucking fascinating to me. The 3 players on the board in the 4 players on the board, the 4 factions on the board, the UNSC, Oni, the Insurrectionists, and the Covenant. Delectable. Fucking delicious. Absolutely scrumdiddlyumptious. It was also, I don't know. Actually, I'm curious. How do people feel about the alien languages in this show? I'm always curious about like how people feel about how alien languages are done, or if it like they should have just translated everything into like English voice acting.
No, I mean, like I think so. It didn't particularly land with me. I was more distracted by how bad those sets looked. Like it's all I could see. With like the characters looked okay, but like the sets they were in were bad. It was like we threw some blue light on a plastic tarp to make a tunnel, and now it looks alien. So that didn't really like register with me. I think for me, I'm happy to have them a bit like in Forward Unto Dawn, where you hear like the little rumbles and like croaks of the Covenant troops. But as far as language, like it didn't sound bad.
Yeah,
I feel like you can't not have a wart in there, and in order to have a wart in there, they have to be speaking their language. So I'm glad they did it.
Man,
did you hear it? Did you
catch it? They have to show the grunts in the show at some point. Right?
Oh, 100%.
Can't keep hiding them.
The Ungla are going to be.
But do you want? I don't have faith in the show's visual.
It feels like the wrong tone. It feels like the right tone.
Hang on.
I have to check.
We're about to get into we are not being sensitive to the plight of the grunts who are.
It's not even that you're not being sent. It's more that there is a reason that I think, if I'm remembering the timeline correctly,
that they're shitty little goblins,
that they're not around right now.
Okay.
Come on, then why'd they even make the show?
No. For this specific fight, so a key note about the grunts is that the grunts are legitimately colonized and enslaved.
So that's what they did with the Scions and the Cabal. Okay. There
is a grunt uprising like once every 2 years. Like
Give it
there
to
is
me.
a
That better
there's
be
a-
an arc
there is
in
a
the show.
full grunt mutiny every like couple of years. It's a problem. Like that's one of the fundamental problems of the Covenant and is why they start losing the war is that like they keep having internal conflicts that completely fucking destroy their military apparatus for a little bit because the grunts are like, we aren't fucking enough. Let us fuck more. And then,
They really are.
Where's Chekhov's grunt? I need like one grunt that is like a season-long thing that's gonna fuck with the Covenant's plan by the end of this season.
The vibe I get from the grunts is like, what if you had some really active sloths, basically? Like they're like all they want to do is hang and mate.
Yes.
And that's basically it. And their dream is like, I want to like hang in the shade or like bask in the sun.
What if
But, like-
this show's version of, you know, Baby Yoda is that look, they're gonna
Baby
you think
Grunt.
the grunts are gonna be like these jokey characters that like are just there to get blown up. Very possible scenario. Or like, what if a grunt's on their side and becomes a little sidekick? That's what I'm thinking.
Let Quan adopt a grunt.
Yes.
Uh,
yes.
All right. So this episode's blown up in my face.
Yeah.
Because I think we're
Didn't
gonna
talk
end up
about Weird
watching-
West. Didn't do any mailbag.
Yeah.
We have a meeting coming up.
Yep. And we have and now we're obligated to watch more of the show. Or like I feel like we will end up watching it.
the
Yes.
second episode's already
yeah,
out.
maybe we'll
right?
do how many episodes are
They're
there?
gonna
Probably 8 or 10.
Right.
Let's see. Halo.
enough to get 2 months of Paramount Plus subscription to their dog shit service.
Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I'll see if I can, you know, pull some PR shenanigans. Because we ended up not overwhelmingly positive, but like all the reviews were basically kind of where we're at, you know,
Yeah.
hoping for the best. Let's
I'll watch some more. Yeah.
I just remembered a lore thing. God, I fucking love Halo. Halo's so good. Halo's so good.
10
We
episodes.
should play those. Rob.
We should
There's
play
there's a
those.
lot of them.
We should play them.
There's a lot of them, but they're all only 8 hours.
Yeah, I was
long.
gonna say, aren't they all
Only
like
8 hours.
short?
Yeah.
Listen, I'm just.
I
do
feel like
that.
8 hours is being conservative on how long it would take to beat each of those games.
This isn't a spoiler, but this will be so delectable to Rob. I think this will drive him through. Hey, Rob, you know the Arbiter
Mhm.
as a character?
Yeah.
So the rank of Arbiter, the whole thing is that it used to be a high military title. Only basically it was like the highest general and highest field commander possible in the Sangheili, and was like extremely culturally important. The role of Arbiter was extremely culturally important. And then after they were assimilated and basically joined the Covenant, it remained that way up until about 300 or 400 years before the events of Halo, where one Arbiter actually took part in a basically like a schism against the Covenant. And so the title of Arbiter through social engineering from the Sanshium shifted from a title that is basically the highest military commander to a badge of shame. But that badge of shame still comes with military command and military prominence. And so basically it is how you label, it is like, so the reason that the character, the Arbiter in the series is labeled the way he is there, it's basically like, fuck you, but we need you. Is the way that the title is the meaning the title takes on. But the problem is that for as much as the Sanshium want that to be the association with the Arbiter, and it kind of has become the cultural association, there is still the underpinning of the Arbiter as our military commander, is the highest rank in the Sangheili forces. And so games like Halo 2 have a really complicated relationship to the Arbiter, where all of the elites are like, holy fucking shit, is that the Arbiter? Is that the fuck? That guy's sick as shit. That's the fucking Arbiter. But at the same time are also conditioned by the religious establishment to be like, ew, gross, the Arbiter. And these two cultures are coming into contrast with one another. And these two like social engineering plans are like really at each other's throats throughout the series. And then after the Great Schism, the Arbiter as a title returns to its original pre-Covenant meaning of high military commander. And then it like transforms a second time after the Great Schism, where some elites remain loyal to the Covenant and others return to Sangheili.
I mean, I'm into it. I often do feel though like I always get into the idea of Halo, like learning the lore stuff, and then I play the campaigns, and I'm like, this stuff is
None
so
of it
jammed to the
matters.
margins
Yeah.
that I'm like, I sure wish we were getting a bit more of this.
So what you're saying is you should play through the Halo campaigns with a lore guide.
No. Well, that's a wrap on today's episode of Waypoint
Look,
Radio. If you
it's
want
only
more from
42 and a
Waypoint,
half hours to play all of the mainline Halo games 1 through 5.
you can follow
It's
us on
just one
Twitter
Final Fantasy Tactics.
Yeah,
at
exactly.
Waypoint.
How long did we play
Facebook and
Stalker
YouTube.
for? That was like a
Waypoint
20-hour game.
I will be your lore guide, Rob.
It's 2
Let me
Stalkers.
let me take you underneath my lore wing.
Is that good? Ren is now flapping her mighty wings, both protectively but also demonstrating their power.
It's true. It's
It's a
true.
little bit of a threat.
It is true. It is a bit like a condor, like stretching its wings as well. Like I feel like
once
a
you
small
get under
prey
there,
animal,
you're not sure what's going to happen.
a small prey animal where suddenly the ground is just gone and we are soaring higher and higher into the air.
Well, if I've already done one of these games, I should do all of them.
You can follow me on Twitter at Rob Zachney. Patrick, where are you?
You can follow me at Patrick Klupik. Weird West is pretty cool. We're going to talk about it more on Mondays. Check out our stream of it on Twitch.
I will say I was playing it last night without us streaming together. I found it a little bit less fun because there are like a lot of down periods.
I was worried. I thought maybe I was wondering that like our dynamic was enhancing what was there.
There are a lot of slow parts where it sure is more fun with someone around because you're waiting for the interesting stuff to happen.
All right. Well, I'll visit some of that over the weekend.
Ren, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter defending Halo 5 at Ren or Maven.
Just slide
Kata.
into those DMs at _Kato
No,
_appears.
Do not-
do this shit in public.
Do not get in
Like,
my DMs. I will fight you in the fucking streets of Twitter.com. Kata, where can you find me on Twitter?
You can also go check out what we published on waypoint.vice.com. This week we have a terrific review of the excellent Norco, which Ren talked about last week. Cameron Kunzman was good enough to write an essay on it and really brought out some of the fascinating characters that exist at both the center and margins of Norco's story. We have also been streaming a whole bunch thanks to Waypoint Plus, and as you probably saw last Saturday, we were in New York for a studio stream where we played a bunch of games and finally broke the seal on Kato's copy of Bloodborne. The first time that game has been played by humans. We raised about 65 grand for Trans Lifeline, but if you want to help us run up the score in overtime, I think the donation link is still live at savepoint.stream. We also started a test sale of some merch. It's something that we've wanted to do for a while, and thanks to our comrade and hero of Waypoint, Rachel Pick, who I want to note has been good enough to take on a huge amount of the administrative workload for everything cool happening around Waypoint Plus. We were able to finally launch waypointgeneralstore.com. Now, as with everything we do, this came together hot, and so right now we basically have a test item up there. It's a coffee mug with the Waypoint diamond on both sides for righties and lefties.
I think we get ours on Monday. I think that's what we're shipping.
I saw
I
people
saw-
already
yeah.
posting pictures of theirs.
Yeah, people are.
I know, but I think like the ones, the sample ones that
Yeah.
were ordered for all of us.
But the fulfillment is
Yay.
fast. I'm excited.
Hell
I
yeah.
want my mug.
All right. Well, let us know how they are. I mean, actually, quite seriously, because like we're like the process going forward is figuring out like contracting with artists as we figure out what merch we want to do. Having folks like Rachel order samples to figure out like how the shirts feel and things like that. There will be like real work put in as we expand this out. So I don't know. Let us know how the process was for yourself, both in terms of the product and buying it and all that sort of stuff, because that will inform what we do in the months ahead.
Now, worth noting, of course, once we finally do have all our ducks in a row and we've like created some designs, we've tested some merch for new stuff, like samples for new stuff we can offer. We're going to retire that mug. It is sort of a beta mug. In the software sense, not the like, alpha or beta. No, it's not like,
But it will make you feel cool
Beta,
to have
yeah,
a limited
merch.
edition mug.
no, ordering that mug is an alpha move. Let's be clear.
And is the profit sharing with Trans Lifeline still happening?
That'll
through this
run
week?
through.
Yeah.
Through the end of the week, yeah.
Yeah, so we also started a Waypoint Plus sale last Saturday. You can use the promo code SavePointSavings when you go to waypointplus.com. If you're listening to this before 8 p.m. Eastern Sunday, you can get 25% off your annual membership. And then as far as the mug goes, through Sunday, half the proceeds from the mug sales will be donated to Trans Lifeline. So even the 65,000 number I quoted is probably no longer accurate. We're well north of that, thanks to the sales so far. So if that sounds good, if you just want more Waypoint, you can go to waypointplus.com and subscribe. Remember to use that promo code, save point savings. That gives you access to our premium feed, but it also helps us, continue to do what we do at Waypoint and make time for streams like the Weird West stream, which I think Patrick and I are going to be exploring a little bit more next week. Our theme music is by Bowen. The track is Miss You off the EP Pale Machine. Learn more at waypoint.zone/BOEN. For now, we are calling time on this week. We will talk to you again next week. Until then, fuck capitalism, but buy our mug and go home. Markets are not necessarily capitalism. Exchange of goods and services, not necessarily capitalism.
No.
It's a totally different relationship.
Yeah,
It's true. It's true. It's true.
100%.
The Halo 5 of capitalism.
Oh, wait, I swear to God. I swear to God, Patrick, that doesn't even work in this
I
context.
saw your tweets. Don't act like you're already out here.
Wait,
I am
I'm
already-
sorry. Is somebody tweeting from in the sacred bubble of the podcast recording?
Yes, I have
This
tweeted
is-
out, I am the Halo 5 defender and none of you motherfuckers can stop me. And guess what? There is not a single person who fucking disagrees with me in the
But there are
replies to
people
that
that
tweet
say,
yet.
for example, the campaign wasn't good, but forget all that. So, just a ringing endorsement of Halo 5.
One person. One.
All right.
I had a better time. Sorry, the campaign is a hot mess and it had a bunch of technical issues, but if it was available on PC, it would be hands down the best Halo multiplayer experience possible. So that's one. That's one person
Oh, now
saying
it's a
the
multiplaer experience?
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
it's
these are-
not.
these are-
Oh,
look
It's
at
not.
these
Oh,
caveats.
It's not.
Look at these
It's
caveats.
not. It's not. That is one person saying that the multiplayer is good and the campaign is bad. Everyone else is on board with me. Listen, fucker. Listen, Rob. One day you'll see. Rob. One day you will see.
Oh, no, I will, because I'm going to play them all.
We
just
will
as soon
see. We will
As
see.
soon as what? Just as soon as what?
as I do it.
Rob. Rob.
She's beating her wings again.
We're done.
Go home.
Bye.